What's up, y'all? Talon here. Today I have 21 Pokemon Scarlet and Violet rental teams that you can use on the Battle Stadium ladder for the Regulation H format. If you were not aware, the Regulation H format is the basically the official format for the Pokemon VGC circuit between, I believe, September 1st and up until January 5th, 2025. So going to be in it for a couple of months and going to be a pretty interesting metagame because all of the restricted legendaries, paradox Pokemon, and then just normal legendary Pokemon are not legal in this format. So everything from a Calyrex, a Zapdos, and a Iron Hands are not legal. So it's basically kind of like a regional dex format. So the power level is going to be pretty low. Going to be some very interesting teams that we see. So I wanted to go over some of the teams just so that people can get their feet wet. So if you appreciate the time and effort it took to basically source all of these rental codes, please subscribe to the channel. I also took the time to recreate a couple teams basically that were doing well in grassroots tournaments online, but I didn't see any recreations of those teams in rental code. So I took the effort to do it myself, making guesswork on the EV spreads with my 10 years plus of competitive knowledge. So if you appreciate that, please subscribe. Leave a comment for any teams that I missed that you want to see recreated. I do a lot of Battle Stadium content in the channel doing recreations throughout the season. So if you want to see a particular team, leave a comment in the description below. And yeah, with all that being said, let's get into a breakdown of these teams. So as a side note, if you want to use the team for yourself, I have the rental code in the top right of the video, as well as in the description below. With each team, I have the Pokepaste featuring the EV spreads, as well as the team's creator. If they have a YouTube channel, I've linked that with the video where they're using the team. So yeah, all of that information on further details for the teams are in the description below. But starting off, we have this Trick Room team that was used by Poke Esports. It has two Pokemon that I do think are very strong in this metagame, Ursaluna and Farigiraf. I mean, Tauros and Incineroar are strong in their own right, but I do think Farigiraf Ursaluna is actually a little weaker than it was in previous formats, kind of weirdly enough. I think the value of Farigiraf is lessened when, although you're stopping Fake Out, the partner Pokemon that you would normally be stopping Fake Out from isn't able to do like restricted Calyrex levels type of damage or something like that. So yeah, I do think it's a little weaker, but worth getting some repetitions in. The main star of the team, though, is the Corviknight and the Executor. So basically, the focus of the team is going to be intimidating Pokemon so that you can get the Iron defenses up with the Corviknight and then just sweeping them with Body Press, or leading Incineroar plus Trick Room and then basically either Fake Out Trick Rooming or Parting Shot Trick Rooming out into the Ursaluna and trying to sweep under Trick Room. Next, we have a very familiar Trick Room team. Basically, this is the same PsySpam Trick Room team that has been doing well since the start of Regulation A, the first Scarlet and Violet format, except the Hatterene is now in place of the Armarouge that was typically there. Initially, Hatterene did not get the Expanding Force access. It wasn't a TM move until one of the DLCs, but now that it has it, it has typically taken precedence over the Armarouge if you're not running a Meteor Beam set for the most part. So yeah, the Hatterene and DD combo, you set up the Psychic Surge and then Expanding Force becomes a spread type attack that does a ton of damage with the terrain boost and an additional base power bump when it is in Psychic terrain. Terrafire, Mystical Fire is good defensively and offensively. You're able to hit Steel types that resist the Expanding Force, which is pretty cool. Torkoal, Lilligant is the secondary mode of the team. You have the Torkoal for the Trick Room. In the later turns of Trick Room, just sweeping teams with Terrafire, Eruption. But you can also lead the Torkoal with the Lilligant. Then you have the Chlorophyll boosted Lilligant that can go for really strong Solar Blades in close combats. Click Sleep Powder to put Pokemon to sleep and then hit them with Eruption. Or if your opponent has led kind of slow and weak to Eruption in general, you can go for after you Terrafire Eruption and potentially clean out their team from the start of the battle. Gallade is something of a mix-up where if you think your opponent is going to go for spread moves to counter your Trick Room setup, you can lead the Wide Guard Gallade, go for that, and then Trick Room with Indeedee. It's also a Dondozo answer with Terra Grass. Basically, you can Terra Grass to resist the Earthquakes, the Wave Crashes, etc. And then go for Sacred Sword, which cuts through the defense boost and should 2-hit KO regardless, just with the sharpness boost. Gallade is a very strong Pokemon. And then last Pokemon in the team, which is sometimes variable, is the Ursaluna. Basically, the Ursaluna is pretty cool in that you can go for a Protect on one of the turns of Trick Room to get the Facade and Guts Flame Orb combination active, or just immediately go for Headlong Rush if you feel like you can just take a knockout there. It's a bit of a mix-up, basically whether you go for Protect or an attack, but if you catch your opponent making the wrong decision, you can get a lot of mileage from that. This Trick Room team is very similar, but is different in one Pokemon, the Araquanid, over the Ursaluna. I think this team is prepared a little bit better for the Rain teams in the metagame. Essentially, you have the Araquanid when you're up against a Wide Guard Pelipper or something like that, which otherwise kind of invalidates the Torkoal. So the Araquanid benefits from the Rain boost. You're able to take a Hurricane not well, but you can at least survive it reasonably well with the high special defense out of the Araquanid and take advantage of their Rain with Liquidation. Leech Life going to be strong against Grass-type Pokemon, and then Wide Guard, as we mentioned with the Gallade, can be effective against Pokemon trying to spam spread-type attacks to get the most value out of their attacks in or out of Trick Room. Gallade is Sharpness Scope Lens on this team instead of the Clear Amulet set. So basically with Scope Lens and Psycho Cut, you're able to go for 50% critical hit chance on the Psycho Cut, which in Psychic Terrain is going to do a lot of damage. You can't ignore Incineroar on the Sacred Sword as easily, but the power boost on the Psycho Cut is definitely substantial 50% of the time, and can also chop through a Dondozo even more effectively. Next we'll talk about a couple of Sand teams. Sand has been doing okay in this format, largely because of the strength of Tyranitar. There's a lot of Torkoal presence on Trick Room teams. It's also a Dark type, so you can switch in on Expanding Force pretty well. The special defense boost from the Sand Stream and the Assault Vest definitely very appreciated against those sort of teams in general. But the real focus of these teams, Tyranitar Sandstream eliminating the Rain on a switch in is also pretty effective against Pelipper. You can just kind of lead it against Pelipper if you want to, because Tyranitar should be outspeeding it generally, and then hit with a Rock Slide. It's also able to switch in if an Archaludon is trying to hit an Electro Shot that turn, and stop, basically make them charge up to take the attack instead of just immediately getting it off. Electro Shot is kind of broken, but Tyranitar at least gives you a little bit of counterplay. It can break the Focus Sashes on a lot of less bulky Pokemon in the meta, so I do like Tyranitar. I don't know if hard Sand teams are the best approach, but it's definitely something people have been trying out at the start of the format. Excadrill, one of the better beneficiaries of the Sand with the Sand Rush ability, able to double its speed stat, and go for really strong Earthquakes. Clear Amulet allowing you to ignore any Intimidates coming out from something like an Incineroar, which combos pretty well with Terraflying Tyranitar, which is able to hit the grass types that would otherwise do pretty well against these combinations, just able to knock it out with a Terra Blast. Speaking of grass types, we have the Amoonguss, which pairs really well with the Primeape and Rotom Heat as a Firewater Grass defensive core. You're able to put things to sleep and basically buy turns for your offensive Pokemon. Salamence is pretty cool as a Dondozo soft check. If you can get Tailwind up before the Dondozo hits the field and Primarina in safely, you can actually haze without having to take a hit on the Primarina, which is definitely appreciated. Rotom Heat is kind of cool with the Terra Electric. You remove all weaknesses with the Levitate active, and then you're basically just using it as a strong support option against things like Amoonguss plus King Gambit. You can basically ignore the Rage Powders and go for Will-O-Wisp. So overall, a strong defensive team with a lot of potent offensive options as well. This next team is also using Sand, but in a way I haven't seen before, or at least not recently. It's one of the few teams with Braviary that I have seen, and basically you have a Life Orb Excadrill which really baits in the Intimidate Incineroar, but if they lead that against the Braviary, you can just knock them out with a +1 Defiant boost to close combat. The Tailwind on the Braviary also enhances your Primarina, potentially your Tyranitar to not have to lead next to the Excadrill to be applying pressure. You can get the Tailwind up and have these slower, bulky Pokemon still outspeed and be doing a lot of damage while taking hits pretty well. I do like experimenting with the Sinistra over Amoonguss on a lot of teams. It feels like you aren't able to get a Spore off against a lot of Pokemon, namely Goldengo, other grass types like Rillaboom, Amoonguss. There's a lot of Terra Grass in the meta as well, so having something like the Sinistra, which provides more support with the Hospitality passively, you don't need to buy a turn to go for Pollen Puff. You can switch in the Sinistra. That's pretty cool, as well as having the Trick Room mode, which the Primarina and the Tyranitar can both benefit from. Weezing Slaking is a combo I have my eye out for this format, basically because Slaking in previous formats, even though you could go for Neutralizing Gas plus removing Truant with the, on the Slaking, its speed tier wasn't that crazy, but now 100 base speed is actually outpacing everything in the format for the most part, outside of like really slow, bulky or really fast Pokemon, like Talonflame and Whimsicott. I guess there's Garchomp as well, but Quaquaval, honestly. But yeah, a lot of the Pokemon in the format are kind of mid-speed tier, which allows Slaking to outspeed them and potentially KO. You also have a Quaquaval on the team, which can do a lot of damage with a Stellar Terra Close Combat or Aqua Step. So after you get the Moxie Boost and an Aqua Step up, you're +1 speed, +1 attack, and you can kind of like really do a lot of damage to your opponent's team, especially if you have Weezing on the field. They can't intimidate you. So overall, pretty cool team, as well as a Goldengo with Trick. One final interesting element on the team, you can go for a very quick Trick. And if your opponent goes for a move after you, they're actually locked into that move. So in a best of one closed team sheet environment, you can get kind of a surprising trick and force them to maybe be in a weird compromised position when they're not expecting to be. This next team was created by a player named Penguin, definitely very strong online player. I've seen them do really well in a lot of online tournaments, but this team, before the World Championship, there was a large Regulation H team called the Hemi Tour. This got top 16 in that with, I think, around 400 competitors, so a really strong performance there with the pledges. If you don't know what the pledges are, I don't blame you. They're a move introduced in Black and White that aren't typically very good. They're moves that combine into one move that have some weird secondary effects. The Water plus Grass pledge has the secondary effect of basically quartering all the speed on your opponent's side of the field for 4 turns, which can basically overwhelm even Tailwind teams. If they go for Tailwind, they're still at 1/2 speed. So you can run bulkier offensive Pokemon that would normally be kind of in a weird spot where, yeah, they're really offensive, but they're taking a hit and getting knocked out first. things like Decidueye, IDD, Sylveon, and Arcanine, they'll suddenly be outspeeding all your opponent's Pokemon and can take advantage of their strong offensive stats. Decidueye is an interesting Pokemon. It's very well positioned with Razor Claw and Scrappy. So Scrappy lets you ignore Intimidate for one, as well as hit Ghost types with both normal and fighting type moves. That's relevant against Goldengo because whether they Terra and do Steel or not, you can still hit them with triple arrows for super effective damage and knock them out. Razor Claw plus the high crit moves give you a 50% crit on triple arrows and Leaf Blade. So Leaf Blade really strong into Dondozo if they have not terrestrialized, and if they have, triple arrows still going to do a lot, as well as having the chance to flinch them and get a defense drop. So overall, very cool options there. And then the IDD with the Psychic Surge. Twisted Spoon, a self-sufficient expanding force user, which can also serve as a Trick Room counter. So if you didn't know, Primeape actually does get Rage Fist. It's not an Annihilate exclusive move, but you are a little, your stats are definitely worse, but you have Eviolite to make up for that defensively, and Anger Point to make up for it offensively. So instead of using Beat Up, you use Surging Strike's Choice Scarf Smeargle, which will activate a +6 Primeape with a 200 base power Rage Fist, I believe. So overall, that's a very, very strong Primeape. Stronger than Annihilate can rank, or faster than Annihilate can typically ramp up. So that's a cool option there. You can also Surging Strike into your Armarouge, give yourself +6 speed. I don't think you're going to knock yourself out even if you don't go for Endure. And then you get the Weakness Policy boost. So suddenly you're very boosted. Your stored powers are doing insane damage. And if your Smeargle is not knocked out, you can switch into IDD next turn, and if it is knocked out, then you get the free switch to IDD and a Follow Me next turn. So overall, a very deadly strategy, as well as a Sneasler, which I do have my eye on this format because honestly, Dire Claw is just a really broken move, and Sneasler's stats are very, very well tuned. This one's a Terra Dark one because your stabs are unfortunately both immune to Goldengo, so having Throat Chop is a good option to either force the Terra or knock them out if they don't with Terra Dark Throat Chop. This next team is a Kommo-o team. I haven't seen a lot of them, but I do think Kommo-o does have some potential this format. This team got top 4 in the Trainer School tournament. It was like a 400-person, $400 prize pool tournament. This team was created by Nico Conieta. I believe that's Desu VGC. Basically, the focus of the team is to set up the Clangerous Soul on the Kommo, giving you a +1 boost in all your stats. In addition, because it's a sound-based move, Throat Spray activates, giving you a additional special attack boost. So you're now +1 in all stats and then +2 in special attack, meaning your clanging scales are doing crazy damage. You have Terrifier defensively, and offensively you're able to remove your weaknesses to Ice and Fairy, as well as giving your Flamethrower a stab. This is very weak to Primarina, I do want to note that, but you do have a Sinistcha, which can handle it pretty well as well as a Goldengo. I do like Spore on the Smeargle because you can basically force the Primarina to Terra Grass to avoid the Spore and then knock it out with Flamethrower that way. This team doesn't have a consistent speed control option, but your main offensive option is going to be the Gardevoir and the Garchomp. So essentially, depending on what your opponent has, if it's like a Tailwind team, you can go for Trick Room on the Meowscarada. If it's a more balancey team, you can use the Milotic's Icy Wind. But really, you're just trying to gain advantage for your Choice Specs, Terra Fairy, Gardevoir's Moonblast, and Dazzling Gleams, as well as the Garchomp's Earthquakes. Because Gardevoir has telepathy, all of its partner Pokemon spread moves won't damage it, so you can go for Earthquake plus Terra, Fairy, Dazzling Gleam, which is near unresisted coverage and just really, really strong if you have the speed advantage, especially on Pokemon as offensively potent as Gardevoir and Garchomp. Now moving on to more Tailwind hyper-offensive teams, we have this Toxtricity team that really takes advantage of its Terra Normal Punk Rock Choice Specs Boomburst really well. So if you didn't know, Boomburst hits all your Pokemon, basically all the Pokemon in the field, including your partner Pokemon. Gardevoir can ignore that with Telepathy. You have Protect on Garchomp, Terra Ghost on Talonflame, as well as Protect. Same with the Serena, also Terra Ghost and Protect, and then the Basculegion is naturally immune with the Terra Ghost, or with the Ghost typing. So that's really cool. We also have a Basculegion with Adaptability to boost its Wave Crashes and Last Respects to insane damage. And if you want to boost that even further, you go for Terra Water. I wouldn't generally advise this unless you're really looking for a specific role on the Wavecraft, just because the interaction between Adaptability and Terra is a little weird, where it basically goes from a 2x boost on Adaptability to a 2.25 boost. It's a little off. I'm not a huge fan of it, but overall, yeah, sometimes you do need that last bit of damage from the Terra Water. Now we have a Tailwind team featuring Sunny Day Whimsicott plus Typhlosion. That's definitely going to be very common, or at least some variants of it. This one is Charcoal. I think Choice Specs and Choice Scarf are both strong as well. But what I really like about this team is the combination of Typhlosion and IDD. I think sometimes the Whimsicott and Typhlosion can be pretty linear and also a little weak to priority. IDD allows you to switch in Psychic Terrain to deal with that, as well as just lead the IDD and the Typhlosion if you don't want to go for the immediate Tailwind. If your opponent doesn't have spread moves, you can just go for the Terrifier, Eruption, Follow Me, and if they knock out the IDD, you get a free switch into Whimsicott after your opponents are chipped down, and they usually can't take 2 Eruption Terrifier. Now we have another Tailwind team, this one focusing around the Ursaluna Bloodmoon with the Terranormal Life Orb, Hyper Voices, and Bloodmoons doing insane damage. We also have another Adaptability Basculegion. This one is more flexible, running Clear Amulet instead of a choice item, so a little weaker, but has the option to switch between Wave Crash and Last Respects in endgames, which I like a lot. It also has a secondary mode of the double Fake Out Incineroar Rillaboom combo with the Nasty Plot Goldengo, so something that's kind of cool is you can just pivot around your Fake Outs, get your Nasty Plots up on the Goldengo, and then eventually pivot out into your Whimsicott, protect your Goldengo, and then get Tailwind, and then just go for really strong Make It Rains from there. This team has Typhlosion and Ursaluna. This one is the Choice Specs Terrified Typhlosion. This is kind of my favorite set. If you're going to go offensive, might as well max out your special attack stat with the Choice Specs. Basically, your focus of this is getting the Tailwind Sunny Day up for the Typhlosion, and then anything that resists the Typhlosion's fire type attacks, the Ursaluna should be able to cover with the Earth Power or the Bloodmoon, so I like that a lot. I'm not super sold on the Tauros and Kingambit. MausApe could be kind of cool, basically just doing the same thing as IDD does, redirecting attention from the Typhlosion turn 1, getting knocked out, and then allowing you to go into the Whimsicott with everything chipped down for the Typhlosion at that point. This team was able to get first place on Pokemon Showdown early on. It's a very hyper-offensive Sand team. Basically with the Talonflame, you set up Tailwind, which allows your Brambleghast to get the +1 in the attacking stat. Terraghost +1 Poltergeist is able to do so much damage to most Pokemon. Shadow Sneak is no slouch either, and then Strength Sap is just such an annoying move if you can't, even if you can bring the Brambleghast down, if the Sandstream isn't up, you go for Strength Sap the next turn, you're back up to full, so it's just a hard Pokemon to clear off the field. And it's really weak to Incineroar, as is the Goldengo to some extent, but Garchomp, Tyranitar, and Glimmora are all really, really strong against that, especially Clear Amulet Garchomp and Meteor Beam Glimmora, so I think it's a strong team overall, lots of great synergy offensively and defensively, so wouldn't be surprised to see teams like this doing well early on in the format. Now jumping into Dondozo teams, this is kind of pulled right out of the end of Regulation A. I think this exact composition got first place and second place at the 2 Regulation A regionals, so basically just picking up where they left off. Basically the Talonflame Goldengo, Dragonite, and Pawmot combination is able to work independent of the Dondozo, so you can lead Talonflame Goldengo. They're expecting Dondozo Tatsugiri in the back, or at least they have to be ready for it, but you could easily just get a bunch of damage to the Goldengo, chip them down for a second, Make It Rain after going for Revival Blessing on the Pawmot, and then sweep with late game Tailwind, Goldengo, and Dragonite. So it's a very variable team. I think it's super flexible, which is something some Dondozo teams can struggle with, is inflexibility. This team is definitely able to play in and out of the Dondozo mode very well. This next team is interesting. A lot of people call it 2-2-2 because you kind of have like 3 modes of 2. So you have the Lycanroc Tyranitar Sand mode, indeed the Armarouge Psychic mode, and then the Dondozo Tatsugiri Dondozo mode. But despite that, they can kind of interplay a lot better than you would think. If you get Trick Room up with the Indeedee and Armarouge, and a Pokemon goes down, you can bring in your Choice Band Tyranitar or your bulky Choice Specs Tatsugiri and just kind of like use them as Trick Room sweepers. So I do think it is definitely an underrated team, especially with Lycanroc. Previously, we had Surging Strike Urshifu, which could kind of invalidate it to some extent because you could just knock it out through the Focus Sash. But if your opponent is going for 2 Rock Slides, like the Lycanroc and Tyranitar are, there's a good chance you only get 1 attack off. And if that happens into the Lycanroc, it's down to Focus Sash, you can go for Endeavor and basically bring any non-Steel or Rock-type Pokemon to knockout range of the either Rock Slide or Sandstorm chip at the end of the turn. So very potent combination. It's a difficult team to play against just because figuring out what they're going to lead can be so important. Now moving into the Rain teams, I think Rain is definitely on most people's radars as one of the strongest early archetypes to beat. Namely because of its ability to boost up the Kingambit, Goldengo, and Archaludon, which are some of the, on their own, strongest Pokemon in the metagame, let alone when you remove their Fire-type weakness effectively with the Drizzle ability. This team is focused on Palafin as well as another Rain Sweeper. There's a lot more Basculegion than Palafin right now, but this set is pretty cool. It has the Eject Pack, so if you go for close combat or get intimidated, you switch out immediately, lose your item, and then late game you can go for Terrafire Acrobatics to beat any grass types that would otherwise handle you. So a lot of cool stuff here. There's also another Sinistra to allow you to basically boost up your Goldengo's HP stat after it's gone for Nasty Plot and maybe taking a hit, heal it up, and then Rage Powder, Make It Rain, and just like deal with your opponents that way. So cool team. Not expecting Palafin to be as dominant as it was in previous regulations. I think Rillaboom is a pretty big hindrance of it, but I like this set as some effort to mitigate that. This team is kind of the standard Rain team right now, or at least it's pretty similar to it. You might see a Rillaboom over the Unamungus or maybe a Goldengo over a Kingambit sometimes, but Archaludon, Pelipper, Basculegion, definitely the strong Rain core right now, the most offensive one. Basically the Basculegion with the Swift Swim going really fast and hitting you with extremely strong water type moves. You don't even have to go for Wave Crash turn 1. I've seen Choice Band flip turn, Terra Water just like knock out a Maushold turn 1 and the whole MausApe combination going poorly from there. Electroshot on Archaludon gives you a special attack boost and hits with a 130 base power and moves instantly in Rain, which is really broken, but yeah, just really strong move overall and makes Archaludon super threatening to deal with. Kingambit is your setup sweeper. Usually it'll be the Goldengo or the Kingambit. Here you're going for the Swords Dance. Black Glass's Terra Dark set, which is able to pair nicely with the Incineroar and the Amoonguss. They can provide cover for you to get the Swords Dance up, and then you just sweep with priority from there with Sucker Punch. Overall, it's a very strong team, definitely not to be slept on. Even though the frailty of the Basculegion is a little annoying, the bulk of Kingambit, Archaludon, Amoonguss, and Incineroar are just enough to cover it a lot of the times. So overall, this team is really similar to Sempra's and most Rain teams in general, but the Toxicroak here is kind of a differentiator. It's pretty cool in that it can close combat an Archaludon if it can't Terra or if it just doesn't and do a lot of damage, or go for Gunk Shot to hit through the Grass Terra and do a lot of damage. So cool option there. It also benefits from Rain with the Dry Skin and allows it to stick around a little bit longer and is an additional fake out Pokemon to allow your Archaludon to go for more Electro Shots or your Basculegion to hit Wave Crashes. This last team by my friend Austin is weirdly enough the only Annihilate Maushold team that I've seen as a rental code. I mean, I've seen a couple, but this is definitely the strongest one. And it hasn't been as prevalent as I was expecting. Maybe people are just saving it for regionals early on, but nonetheless, this team is partially a Rain team, partially a Maushold team. I think the Maushold's beat up obviously pairs really well with the Annihilate, allows you to get to a base 250 Rage Fist right off the bat, but you can also beat up your Archaludon to boost up your power of your Body Press with Stamina, so you can go to +4 Body Press and deal with a lot of your counters. You don't have to go for Electroshot into Draco to knock out an opposing Incineroar. You can just Body Press it straight up. Friend Guard also incredible for boosting the defensive prowess of your Annihilate, and Archaludon and Sinistra can heal up any damage you take, making it such a difficult team to deal with defensively. Like, try to imagine dealing with an Archaludon at +4 defense, an Assault Vest, as well as Friend Guard and Hospitality support and Follow Me. It's really synergistic team. I do like it a lot. Even though it is on a lot of people's radar, I do expect it to be doing well early on just because of all the synergies on the team. So that's going to do it for a breakdown of these rental teams. If you enjoy this as a resource, please subscribe. It took a lot of time to collect everything, so if you appreciate it, leave a like on the video and comment which teams you want to see me feature in the future. With all that being said, peace y'all.